This anime took 7 years to draw by hand. And this film is blowing up for its unique approach to portraying speed and movement that on paper shouldn't even work. And that's just the beginning. You know how the title says 5 anime movies that broke all the rules? Well, I lied. We're actually talking about 6. But we're not going to be talking about the obvious ones, so no Akira or Reze Arc on this list. Now let's talk about them.
じゃあなんで走ってるの？ぼやけるから。ぼやける？何が？現実。
100 Meters is the most experimental anime I've seen in a long time, and this one dialogue exchange explains it perfectly. The film follows Togashi, who is an extremely gifted runner, and his friend Komiya, and their different philosophies on why they run. The manga was written by the same guy who wrote Orb on the Movement of the Earth, so you know it's getting philosophical. But that's not where the rule breaking takes place. That is through its very unconventional art style and animation. It's got a pencil-sketched, unpolished look and almost uncanny valley level of detail movements, and is jittery and unsmooth. By all accounts, this should have been an ugly mess. Yet, all of these things are what adds to this film's genius. During the teenage and adult sections of the film, they decided to use rotoscoping. Rotoscoping is basically filming real footage and then animating on top of it. This is nothing new to anime, but it was often the subject of hate because everyone thought it looked weird or creepy. So what did 100 Meters do? They leaned all into the weirdness to properly capture the feeling of before and especially during the running. Also, rotoscoping is used for just about everything movement-based, especially the body language that anime rarely animates in such detail, such as the facial expressions and emotions. But they don't just use rotoscoping. You've got a 5-minute one-shot that's in the rain that is, without a doubt, been running on my head in repeat ever since I saw it. There's also the traditionally animated scenes from when they were in middle school that not only is amazingly animated as well, but really creates that contrast later on. And my gosh, the ending left me emotional, excited, and pondering everything the movie had to offer. I barely touched on the amazing sound design or the different characters and their interesting life philosophies, so if you'd like a whole video on 100 Meters, let me know. But in any case, in the world of clean, distinct, and smooth visuals of modern anime, 100 Meters sure found ways to stand out. If you haven't seen this movie yet, do yourself a favor and watch it after the video. You won't regret it. On a completely different visual note, words bubble up like soda pop is what would happen if you grabbed Wind Waker, 80s City Pop, and a touch of 90s slice of life and threw them all in a blender. I first watched this during Finals Week Blues, and it instantly cured it. Until I realized that essay was due that night. Anyways, there are 3 major aspects that made words bubble up like soda pop stand out. The first is what I call visual haikus. The main character, Cherry, isn't a big fan of talking to people. However, he is a massive fan of haikus. So the film decided to allow him to communicate visually by plastering his haikus on various buildings that appear throughout the film. Most anime would instead just have us hear his internal dialogue and thoughts. It's such a simple thing, but it adds so much to the equally melancholic and wholesome atmosphere. The second is what I at first thought would make this film boring. Both characters are kinda awkward and hide behind their insecurities. Cherry mostly communicates through haikus and keeps his headphones on to avoid people. Smile, our other main character, despite being internet famous, has braces and 2 large front teeth, so she wears a mask and doesn't let anyone see them. I thought since both characters sounded so awkward, watching them fall in love wouldn't work, but boy was I wrong. It actually makes their growth and developing feelings that much more heartwarming. We get to see their first video call, agonize over trying to talk to each other, and the first time they actually do. It feels real in a very nostalgic way and feels distinctly Gen Z. But the final point is what really brings everything together. That is, of course, its distinct visual style. Anime is colorful, but it's not usually this colorful. Years before the term Kage Nashi was made popular, this anime thrived in it. For those who don't know, Kage Nashi literally means no shadows. For this film, it means that everything looks pretty flat and doesn't have much shading to it, with the focus instead going to the movement and emotions. Most anime at the time thought it had to have a complex shading and lighting to look good. You know, have that ufotable polish, but Words Bubble Up proved this didn't have to be the case. The way the camera frames the different scenes is also masterful. Like when Cherry is on the video call with Smile and one of her friends hangs up, that side of the screen stays dark until she hops back on. Also, as a bonus, the soundtrack is super good, guys. Unlike the usual anime soundtrack, it's got a very indie 90s video game lo-fi vibe to it that just completes the package and vibes so well. Whereas Bub Bub Like Soda Pop isn't as obviously distinct as, say, 100 meters, but its subtleties add up to create an anime movie like no other. This next anime movie is what happens when an anime adaptation of a video game is not only good, but has a next level American adaptation. Just not in the way that you'd think. Listen, you can do what you want with your anime experience, but I'm someone who avoids dubs like the plague, okay? We're talking, I don't even watch Cowboy Bebop or Full Metal Alchemist in dub. My one exception is Street Fighter, the animated movie. The dub itself actually sucks though, and sounds exactly how you'd expect any dub from the 90s to sound.
This thing's transmitting information right under your nose.
Buffalo or whoever you are, you're full of it!
The reason I prefer it is for one simple reason, the soundtrack.
What do you mean, right this minute?
Sure, why not?
Yep, you heard that right. In the English version of this anime movie, Ken is jamming out to Korn, and People Fight to Them Bones by Alice in Chains. Usually any changes that are made to anime in English adaptations are cringe and narrow-minded, and maybe I'm crazy, but the soundtrack elevates the mood and intensity of each fight so much. The other major rule this film breaks is its high budget for a video game anime adaptation, with it costing around $12 million in today's money, which is 3 times the budget of Chainsaw Man: The Reze Arc. This means this is some of the finest 90s animation you'll see. The animators really took their time to deliver some amazing fights and choreography, with each fight having a satisfying sense of weight to it. I especially love how the camera stays with the fighters so you can follow each punch. The standout is of course the legendary Chun-Li battle, though Ryu vs Fei Long is a close second for me. Now the climax and story left much to be desired, but other than that, this is one of the best anime video game adaptations out there. This next one might feel a little out there to be included on this list, but hear me out. We're talking about Burn the Witch. Burn the Witch follows 2 witches, Noelle and Nini, and takes place in the same universe as Bleach. They are part of Reverse London, which protects normal London from a bunch of dragons by using magic guns and friendly dragons. Not only is that a pretty sick premise, especially paired with Tite Kubo's signature drip and cool factor, but the movie also stands out specifically in the witch anime genre. The majority of witch anime takes 2 approaches to its stories. Either A, it's like Kiki's Delivery Service, where the witch travels to new lands, meets people, and uses her magic to help others. Or B, the Harry Potter route, where there's a magic school with slice of life, friendship, and mystery, with the occasional battle. Now, there had been some witch anime that already broke this rule. Look at you, Strike Witches. But it's rarely a girls with guns anime, never a battle shonen, and it's hardly ever a movie. As I mentioned, this is an action shonen, where the witch pair take on jobs for money and fame as their 9-to-5 job. That means until they get dragged into the larger plot, they aren't fighting dragons for much other than simple rewards. Pretty different from your average shonen protagonist. Also, speaking of this being a movie, what's unusual is the manga only had 4 chapters out, so instead of waiting until there was enough to make an anime, they decided to make a short 1-hour movie. This is of course not the norm at all, especially to this level of craft and quality. Usually studios either wait until the manga is done to create a film or a 12-episode series, or wait until the manga is far enough along that they can create seasons worth of content. To be honest, I don't know of another anime that has done this, but that's a big testament to Kubo and his craft. Is this the best anime film on this list? Probably not, as it feels very much like the beginning of a series, but what's there is some really fun characters, an interesting world, and a really cool style. Plus, who doesn't love witch dragon hunters? Alright, but do you know what Burn the Witch doesn't have? Steven Spielberg's stamp of approval as, and I quote, one of the greatest adventure movies of all time, and is the film that got me to dive all in on watching anime. The film in question is The Castle of Cagliostro. This is a film that's part of the Lupin III franchise and was directed by the legendary Hayao Miyazaki. Yup, before he co-founded Ghibli, he made this film. The thing to know about Miyazaki is he's a pretty stubborn guy, especially in the early days, and would clash pretty hard with authors whose work he adapted, even if that meant throwing the source material in the trash can. The year before, Lupin III: The Mystery of Momo was released and was probably the closest in style and characters to the original manga by Monkey Punch. That means the movie is wacky, vulgar, violent, and quite honestly pretty insane. Lupin is not the good guy. He's an anti-hero who steals because he's greedy, doesn't mind killing, and his main motivation is, comparable to Denji's, if you catch my drift. If you've seen literally any Ghibli film, then you know this is basically the exact opposite of everything Miyazaki makes. So naturally, when he and the other Ghibli co-founder Takahata helmed the second half of the original Lupin III series, they made him a goofy, smart, lovable, and chivalrous gentleman thief. Now he steals mostly from bad guys for the thrill and challenge of it, doesn't kill unless he absolutely has to, and his womanizer ways are significantly toned down. When Miyazaki directed Cagliostro, he took it even further, with the treasure being nice, but the main goal being to save a princess from an evil count. He doesn't even use his iconic gun in the film, and his fancy car and gadgets are swapped out for a Fiat 500 and a watch that shoots wires. And you know what's the craziest part? Cagliostro came out in 1979. Miyazaki's version of the character bled into the manga's version of Lupin in almost every adaptation since. It became more of a blueprint on how to make a Lupin series or movie than the source material did. I don't know of any other franchise or scenario that this has happened with anime ever. To be fair, it's likely in large part to how much Miyazaki hit it out of the park with his first movie. The pacing, exciting action, animation despite the time crunch, and character development is all top notch. I'm probably getting carried away in glazing this film, but it will always hold a special place in my heart. You don't need to watch any other Lupin content to understand this movie. Just give it a watch when you get a chance, you won't regret it. Alright, but I saved probably the craziest and certainly the most adrenaline pumping movie for last. That honor goes to Redline. The year is 2009, and anime is quickly transitioning to digital drawings and the use of CGI. That is except for this little film that took 7 years and over 100,000 frames of meticulous, hand-drawn animation. Can I say that again? This hour-and-a-half movie took 7 years. To contrast that, the Castle of Cagliostro was created from start to finish in 6 months, which, to be fair, was an unhealthy crunch time, but still, Madhouse almost went under because the director and team poured everything they had into this racing anime. I don't know if my words can fully describe just how insane this movie is, so check it out. This scene of a crowd of hundreds of aliens watching a race, hand-drawn. This scene of JP switching levers and warping as he enters super speed, no CGI. You see what I'm saying? Does this film have much of a plot or deep and philosophical meaning buried within the 7 years of frames? Nope. It does have an annoying amount of fan service though. But no, they didn't really care about any of that. They cared about 3 things and 3 things only. A super creative visual style, cool looking characters, and the most insane races you will probably see not just in 2009, but ever. Making this list and rewatching these very different masterpieces to create this video was a joy. It reminded me that at the end of the day, anime is an art form, where creators push boundaries and break rules to bring their creative visions into reality. Which of these films will you be checking out? Let me know in the comments. Also, subscribing and sharing the video would be a massive help. With all that said, you're pretty awesome. Just wanted to throw that out there, and I'll see y'all next time.